All right, episode 31, Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here, and we have a guest joining us this week.
On the Mike Piazza episode.
Mike Piazza episode number 31.
Forget.
I didn't forget. As long as it wasn't Reggie Miller, I was good with it. We don't respect that 31.
But you don't.
I don't. I don't.
He's getting a lot of heat for his announcing these days. Are you guys Reggie Miller fans of his
I like Reggie Miller's announcer.
Oh, okay.
Not hurt my team. Our guest today is Frank Stampfl. He's the senior producer and on-air host at the FNTSY Sports Network. Frank, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Good. How you doing? The beard game is strong.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I said when I saw him.
The beard game is strong.
You gotta step it up, man. I mean, Brian's got a little more than you.
Nah, man, I can't do it. I've tried and
I've told you.
We've had this conversation.
And we're gonna have it again right now. You should try to go.
Or not.
Why not?
I have tried to go. That's what I just said. I've tried.
I've known you for about 6 years. I've never seen you.
It's been the same goatee.
I've never seen you try. So I've never seen it.
Yeah, you have.
So I don't know that it's actually
what's
happening.
funny?
Are there pictures? Is there evidence?
No, there's not. Not that I'm aware of. I have to ask my fiance.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Have you ever rocked the beard in public?
No, not in public. But I've tried growing.
Just stay in your house for like a month.
Basically, once I
think you could. You're just like
once I got to like the 2-week mark,
that's what I mean.
It just irritated me. So I just couldn't do it. And I was like, nope.
It probably wasn't even that much hair though.
It wasn't, but it was irritating me. I couldn't take it.
I'm Puerto Rican, man, so I'm like, I don't know, like.
So it's irritating me, so I just couldn't do it.
So I'm like, we don't get irritated.
One day, I think eventually, and I've talked to you about this before, I think eventually I will do it. And if I ever have to, come on home and go bald, you got to have something on the chin. You can't just be bald and like.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say.
I feel like that.
Once you eventually shave your head, you got to do it.
Yeah, everyone says it's annoying. Honestly, I don't even notice it's here anymore.
I was gonna.
To be honest, it's just natural. The thing that's more annoying than the beard, the mustache. The mustache like goes in my mouth while I'm eating. Yeah, it's really annoying. That's the worst part.
So why don't you just trim it at the front?
I'm lazy.
I do that all the time.
Because see,
I trim it here.
That would annoy the hell out of me.
That is by far the most annoying.
I can see that.
I get it trimmed when I go to my barber, which is like once every 3 weeks. So I should probably trim it more often.
Every 3 weeks.
You could just do it at home. You get the little trimmer and.
Yeah,
I never thought
I'm just lazy.
Start off this podcast talking about facial hair.
Wait, we're not done yet. How long did it take to grow that?
So I shaved completely on Halloween because I was Dr. Evil for Halloween. So since then, I haven't shaved the bottom. I've got it like touched up.
So you didn't shave November?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really since Halloween. I'm evil.
Do you use beard oil?
I do not. I have a whole bunch of brushes and stuff that people buy me. I don't really use them. Don't tell my girlfriend. Yeah.
Damn, yo. People give me these gifts. I'm not using them. Don't
tell anybody.
I won't tell anybody that. Okay. Well, you know what? I would also say I would try it, but the fact that I also like do on-air work at a television station, that really doesn't allow me any time to seriously go in. I have to like not do anything on air for like a month or two.
Yeah,
really?
To get it like shaped up and
ain't
stuff. Get it out right.
Ain't nobody trying to see me growing my hair out while I'm reporting on camera.
I mean, I've seen it. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it on, like, TV before.
Ain't gonna fly where I work.
You're about to see it on a podcast right now.
Hey, James Harden could pull it off.
Yeah. I couldn't go that far.
Yo, I always used to say, like, I could never, and you're a Yankee fan, so I'm bringing this up now. I could never play for the Yankees. Like, I've brought that up before. I could never play for the Yankees because they still, I think it's a stupid-ass policy, but they still have the policy where you have to shave when you join the team.
Look, man, you play for the Yankees and checks has come in, you shave. So I'm not buying that.
When you see that
you're gonna shave.
That 5-year, $150 million contract.
You're gonna be like, oh, I'll shave. Yeah, I'll shave.
I'm not 150. I wouldn't earn that much money. I'm talking about minor league.
Have a little faith.
You're still shaving. Nah, I'm saying you're.
No, I'm just not playing baseball. Like,
okay. All right. Well then. Okay. Turn away that financial.
All right. Wait. The point is though, isn't that a stupid rule? Like, you don't think that's a stupid rule?
I mean, I think it's kind of stupid, but
especially now that beards are in. Look around the room.
Yeah.
Like,
look at Matt.
More people have beards in this room than don't.
Yeah. Sorry guys. I'm not in because I don't have a beard.
You could get one. You just don't want one.
Why? My goatee game is strong. Why can't that count for anything? Oh, y'all looking at the goatees like it's whack? I'm done with y'all.
I stopped doing the goatee when I was in college. because I just.
What are you trying to say? I don't even know what you're trying to say there. like, what are you trying to say there?
It's just, you just change it up. You know what I mean? Like,
all right.
I think, get some stubbles. Like, just grow it out.
We're done here.
Why not?
we're done here. Frank, how you doing?
Hashtag let's explore the beer.
You're doing well beside the beer talk. You're doing well.
Yes.
As we already introduced you as a senior producer on air talent at FNTSY Sports Network, tell us a little about what you do, how you actually got to the FNTSY Sports Network, where you guys talk a lot about fantasy sports.
Yeah, so I actually started as an intern a long time ago. I think it was back in 2013. I was writing for one of their brother, sister websites, I guess you could call it, rotoexperts.com. That's how I got started writing. Actually, I used to have a website with someone I went to high school with, Michael Florio. So we started our own fantasy site. I moved on to rotoexperts.com, started writing with them. And then through that, I was able to get an internship with the FNTSY Sports Network. They had a video simulcast show that they did every morning at SiriusXM. So I started off as a video production intern there, so on and so forth. 4 or 5 years later, senior video producer with them, on-air host. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the way that the fantasy sports industry is growing nowadays, I mean, it's like you can find more people on the street that play fantasy football than don't. So, I mean, it feels like everyone's kind of into it. It's a lot of fun. It's fun, man.
Is it crazy for you? Because I remember about 6 years ago, you told me you would love to do something working in fantasy. Like that kind of was your thing, and you put it out there, and now you are. You ever stop back and just thinking like, oh, shoot, like I'm really actually doing this?
Yeah, it's part of like living in the moment, right? And kind of like consciously knowing what you're doing. I remember the first time my boss, Nando DeFino, I grew up like in high school, college, listening to his podcast. And I used to send him stuff on Twitter, like podcasts that I would do and be like, hey man, tell me what I can work on.
That's crazy.
I used to like aspire to do what he did. Now I work with him. He's my boss. We've done shows together. That was a surreal day for me. The first time that I ever got to like fill in on a show and work with him, I thought like, wow, this is crazy. Because I grew up listening to the guy. Like, all I wanted to do, it was just, like you said, imagine you could get paid to talk about fantasy sports. Like, I don't think there's anything better than that. Like, or at least that's how I would view it. So that was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to know what in particular kind of drew you to fantasy sports. Like, what made you want to kind of go down that path in particular?
He's like, were you fantasizing about fantasy sports?
I should have asked it that way.
So
not with that tone, though.
Yeah, that made it sound a little creepy.
Yeah, like what kind of fantasies are we talking about?
I don't know.
About
I mean,
now?
Everybody has their own thing, so who knows? I don't know.
I think that's a really good question, and it's kind of the same way you grow up being a fan of like a sports team, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's like whatever your dad taught you to be a sports fan of, your mom, whatever, like whoever you grew up with, if your dad's like a Jets, Yankees fan, whatever, you grew up to be that fan. I grew up playing fantasy sports with my dad, actually. It was, something that we bonded playing together. I mean, this guy, he's been playing fantasy since pretty much the inception of it. He used to, before computers, he would mail his fantasy roster in to like the commissioner. Like if you wanted to make trades, you would have to like call up someone on the phone and say, hey, I want to make a trade with you.
World.
So
he
used to ask me when I was a kid, like, all right, what do you want the team name to be? Like, that's how I would get started. You could name the team, and then it would grow from there. All right, who's your favorite player? I'll try to get him on the team, so on and so forth. Then when I got to high school, that's when I really started playing. I remember I'll never forget my first fantasy football draft. Had no idea what I was doing. Just drafted purely based on the players that I love. I had a bunch of knuckleheads on my team. Terrell Owens on the Buffalo Bills. Chad Ochocinco when his name was still Chad Johnson. Like I just drafted players I loved. Now that's not how you should play the game.
No, definitely not.
Was that a good team though?
Not if you want to win.
I actually made the playoffs. I made the playoffs my first year.
Those are good players that you mentioned.
I had Thomas Jones. In his career year with the Jets. He had 1,500 rushing yards a year, double-digit touchdowns. I will never forget it. I remember my whole draft. First round, D'Angelo Williams. Second round, Phillip Rivers. Third round, Chad Johnson. Fourth round, Terrell Owens.
I remember this.
I remember all of it. Fifth round, Thomas Jones. I had Kellen Winslow as my tight end in my first year. You never forget your first fantasy football draft. At least I have.
That's definitely quotable, right? Do you remember the team name? Do you remember your fantasy team name for the first team?
I'm trying to remember my first fantasy draft.
I don't.
Because I feel like it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be ridiculous, kind of like your first email name, where you put a whole bunch of dumb stuff. Your first email name is awful. Like
mine is a Hotmail account.
Hotmail. Yeah, mine was too. And I always shout out people who still have Hotmail or AOL.
Yeah.
Like,
I had terrible AOL emails. I don't remember my first team name. Now I know. I try to name the team after like something witty involving a player team.
Yeah.
A player that I have on my team.
But when you were young, you weren't that witty. You just,
Nah, yeah. Me and my brother had Dwight's fifth child before.
What?
Dwight's fifth child, because Dwight Howard, you know.
That's great.
We had that before. Great. I'm trying to think of other team names we had.
That's great.
Somewhere over Dwayne Bowe, because you drafted Dwayne Bowe that
cool
year.
Those are clever, witty names.
I'm trying.
When you're young, you don't come up with that.
The year I had Julius Thomas as a keeper when he was with the Denver Broncos, my team name was Orange Julius. Like the old smoothie spot from back in the day.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you have any decks?
Like,
I remember we used to play in a league together. I feel like you did have something clever. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I had you in my fantasy football league a couple of times. We played. I didn't do it last year, and I'll probably restart it this year or something.
Yeah,
I haven't done. I fell off in fantasy. I'm being honest. I've fallen off in fantasy sports.
I don't even.
Because I just felt like I just didn't have the time. So I really used to love to do fantasy NBA. I just felt like I didn't have the time to do it anymore. It's just stuff that happens as you get older and become a parent and all this stuff.
I love fantasy basketball, man. I wish it would grow in popularity. It's so tough because the fantasy basketball draft season is happening during the football season. And football just dominates. And I get it. Like fantasy football.
It's easier too.
It's fun. It's once
fantasy
a week.
football is easier
That's
to manage.
All it is.
Yeah.
Like you set your lineup for the Thursday night game, Sunday night. Basketball, it's every night. Baseball is even more of a grind.
I got out of baseball.
162 games, 6 months straight.
Do you do fantasy baseball?
Yeah,
of course he does. He's a fantasy junkie.
I'm in 7-8 leagues, man.
Is fantasy baseball?
Yeah. Dude.
How
do you keep up with all that?
I probably have I have like $600-700 invested in fantasy baseball this season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there an obscure sport that you do fantasy for?
Yeah.
Because like I knew
soccer.
I knew a guy in college who did fantasy golf, and I was like, what are you doing?
Don't sleep on fantasy golf right now. Fantasy golf is huge. I'm telling you.
I'm sleeping.
Especially in daily fantasy, DraftKings, FanDuel.
I sleep on regular golf.
You can make so much money right now playing fantasy golf. It's huge. It's blowing up.
Are you playing, because I don't know how it works, so explain. Are you doing this in terms of the daily? Are you doing this like per hole? Or can you bet on a player per hole? Valid. Well, now we can say that it's betting because that's what it always was. Now we can say that. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Are you doing it per hole? Is like per round? Like how does that work?
So I personally don't play a lot of DFS golf. I've maybe submit 2 or 3 lineups in my life playing DFS golf.
Okay.
Admittedly, I should be more involved in it because there's a lot of money to be made in DFS golf right now. But I know it goes based on, you get fantasy points based on round, making the cut. So that's why like fantasy golf is so fun because like if your golfer doesn't make it through the first cut, like you could potentially be out of it after like the first day.
It could be, yeah.
Of the tournament or whatever. So like I know you get fantasy points based on how well you do in a round, where you finish, and if you're in the top 10, you get more points. Top 5, based on there's so many things. If you're under par, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes involved. Like you should have a fantasy golf. I can hook you up with a fantasy golf expert if you need.
I mean, that's going to be now you got me thinking about maybe I will play it.
If why are you
making your face?
Do you know anything about golf?
I actually do like golf.
Probably
so
do.
I
was all tuned in to the PGA Championship last week. I'm a Tiger fan. Always been a Tiger fan. I was tuned in last week. There's some other golfers I like. Ricky Fowler. I've covered some golfing events.
Yeah.
I got to do the PGA Championship in Valhalla in 2014. Barclays. So I like the sport of golf. I don't dislike the sport of golf. It's just not the sport that when I think fantasy necessarily. That's what I'm going. It's kind of, you understand what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like not that thing that I would think of going with it. But you're saying there's a community. Look, I'm starting to think there's a fantasy community for everything. Yeah. Or at least every sport.
Is there fantasy tennis?
Not that I know of yet. I mean, it might be out there. It's just not. It hasn't blown up yet. Like fantasy UFC, like on DraftKings. Like that is
this guy's world.
That is huge now too. Like you get points for knockdowns, punches landed.
You gonna do that?
Takedowns. Whether you
rather do UFC than golf.
Nah, I wouldn't.
All right, whatever.
Either way, it's tough. I mean, but hey, look, if you know golf, I would say try it, man.
I'm taking
I might try it. Yeah. I damn sure ain't doing no fantasy UFC.
I'm taking a chokehold over a putt every day.
But they have DraftKings for soccer now. Like I'm sure they'll have it for the World Cup too. Like
You know, I'm a big soccer guy. I would probably get in some action on that for the World Cup. I probably would check that out.
3 games a day. I mean, you're gonna have enough players to play.
Yeah, I'm excited for the World Cup. I can't wait for that. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk with Frank some more fantasy stuff. His thoughts on the NBA playoffs, the conference finals, the NBA award finalists, which were announced the other night, and big news that came down this week with sports betting now being legalized, or at least could be legalized in your state, depending on what your state wants to do. We'll talk about that when we come back on the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. What's up, listeners? You know sometimes how it can be hard just to get from point A to point B. Now, when I have to get anywhere and I don't want to deal with the hassle of public transportation, it ain't hard to tell how I get around. I always make sure to use the best car service app in the game. I'm talking about Lyft. Lyft offers rides in minutes. All you have to do is download the Lyft app, request a ride, and you will be on your way quickly. Lyft is all about happy riders and happy drivers. Take a ride with them and you'll see why 9 out of 10 rides end up with a 5-star rating. Lyft always has amazing offers for new customers, and I'm here to tell our listeners about a great offer today. Lyft is currently offering free ride credit to Ain't Hard to Tell listeners. If you are new to Lyft, then you are eligible, and getting your credit is easy. All you have to do is download the app and use the promo code AHTTPOD to unlock your free credit today. Ain't hard to tell who has the best car app service, so use the code today and ride out loud with Lyft. The best new sports web series is here. It's from Backpack Broadcasting, and it's called The Sports Walk. The Sports Walk is a series where diverse sports fans take a walk and share their views at the intersection of sports and society. The entire first season is now available on Backpack Broadcasting's YouTube channel and backpackbroadcasting.com. See what other sports fans have to say about a variety of issues in the world of sports. Watch all 13 episodes from season 1 and take the Sports Walk today. All right, welcome back to the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here, and we are joined this week by Frank Stampfl, FNTSY Sports senior producer and on-air host. We're going to start off by talking with what was some of the big news this week in that Supreme Court ruling, 7-2 decision where sports betting now will be legal, at least if your state chooses to pass that in this country. How big do you think this is, one, for sports, the economy, and fantasy sports in particular?
Yeah, it's huge. Like, I don't even know if there's a word to describe. Like, this is going to change the way that we watch sports. I honestly do believe that. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with fantasy, right? Especially with the NFL. Some people on Sundays after the Jets play, I mean, you're a normal fan. Most people are not tuning into the Browns versus the Chiefs. People don't really care unless you have a wide receiver playing for the Chiefs in fantasy. Now, I mean, people are going to have even more exposure to that because of gambling. 2.5 point favorite. I want to take the Chiefs. I think they're going to win this game. You're tuning in for that whole game now. So I get why this is huge for the owners specifically. I mean, they're going to gain so much out of this. I mean, TV deals coming up soon. I really do think that it's going to change the way we watch sports. We've already heard DraftKings, FanDuel, like all these fantasy sites kind of merging with sports books to offer that straight from your phone. You can just gamble straight from your phone while you're watching a game, in-game betting. There are positives and negatives with anything. And I think especially, some of the things that we're going to hear, it's going to be, I think it could be fun to gamble, but at the same time, like, everything has to be done in moderation. Too much of anything could be bad. And then what we also have to worry about with gambling is college sports, man. These athletes are not getting paid.
Yeah.
And you're gonna hear so much about the integrity of the game. How do you know that an official at the end of the game isn't calling a certain call because they have money riding on the game? I mean, we've seen that in the NBA already when it wasn't legal. So, I mean, we're gonna have to worry about that. College athletes not getting paid. They miss a couple of free throws late purposely to cover a spread or to lose a game. So I think there are a lot of positives and negatives, but to me, this is huge. I think we're going to look at this 10 years from now, and we're going to say that was the day that changed sports. I really do believe that.
No, I think so too, and I think you bring up some good points with college athletics, and I actually think it might be a good thing. It might actually force these kids to actually start getting paid.
That was my first thought.
That's kind of actually my thing. I think this might be the thing.
It could go both ways. Yeah.
It could go both ways.
Better go that way.
I hope it goes that way. First, couple things here. Why do you think this one took so long? For so many old people holding on, like, man,
you just answered the question.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is gonna corrupt. I don't think it's gonna corrupt sports because I think it's already been going on, and there's already stuff around sports that have been leaning towards it. For example, one of the things I always have, Frank, is why do we have the injury report in football? The injury report in football that goes out every week, it doesn't exist so people can know what the injuries are. It exists for gambling. Like that's
it influences the lines.
It influences the lines.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason. That's the whole reason for it, right? Like it's not like if I'm a team, why would you want to know that player X's ankle is hurt? Well, then everybody's going to target it. That information, I wouldn't want that information to be out there, would I? There's only one reason information's out there. So I think we've been dancing around it a whole history of time in sports, but now we're here. Why do you think it's taking so long? Besides the old people being,
Look, I think that's a good point. I just think that there was such a stigma behind it. And I mean, there probably still is. Yeah. Everything a lot of what you hear about gambling is negative. I mean, because people look at it like an addiction. I mean, anything could be addicting. It can be. But people look at gambling specifically and, what it can do to people. I mean, people lose houses, families, whole lives over gambling debts. And that's with it only being legal in one state in the United States to this point. That was in Nevada, obviously. So I think that there's just a negative stigma that comes with gambling. I think, look, what people need to figure out how to do, and it's very similar to fantasy. If you play DraftKings, you play FanDuel, you have to learn how to manage your bankroll. You need to have a budget for this. Like, if you're going to be serious about it, tell yourself, all right, I'll put $100 away per week that I'm going to use to gamble on sports. If you blow all that on Monday, then you don't gamble for the rest of the week. People need to just be smart in the way that they do it. It's very similar to DraftKings, FanDuel. You hear people say it. One of the first rules of playing DFS is managing your bankroll. Don't blow it all in one game. Don't blow it all in one night. You play about 5 to 10% of your bankroll on any given night. So I think there are similarities between that and gambling. But to answer your question again, I just think it's like there's a negative stigma behind it. That's what's taken so long. But now everybody wants a piece of the pie. I don't know if you've heard about these integrity fees. The leagues want to get in on it. The NBA wants 1% of all bets that come through these sports books. So people want to cut now. And I think that now that they see that there's always been an opportunity to make money, but now that it's actually feasible and it's right in front of them, that's why it's happening, obviously.
Yeah, and they're going to get it.
I don't have that much faith in people being responsible with however they're going to
I agree with you 100%. Like, I could come on here and tell people what they should do. So that's not going to happen.
And I'm glad you did because you brought up a lot of valid points. I just don't have the faith in people because as I've often said on this podcast, people are stupid and people are going to continue to be stupid. So with gambling, it's just like, I mean, I saw some people talking about this and some people see it as a negative just because like, oh, why are they trying to legalize it in other states? But it's kind of inevitable. It's kind of like I compared it to weed and I've seen other people make the same comparison where it's like, just because you legalize it, I don't think it means necessarily that people are going to stop doing it or a lot more people are going to continue to do it. It's going to be more in our face. But I feel like, I think my biggest concern, you talked about it already, is are the college athletes going to get paid now that this is kind of going to open up? Are some of the college athletes going to be betting also?
Well, if I was them, I'd be like, "We're not getting paid now, so I'm gonna try to get some money somehow."
And that's it. I think that's a good thing because maybe now this will open up the floodgate. It's only, you know what? I'll just put it this way: it's only a matter of time before the NCAA is gonna be like, "All right, F it."
I feel like it could force the NCAA's hand because of what Frank said. Because what they have to worry about is, what if a kid misses a couple free throws in the basketball game, throws an interception on purpose, fumbles the ball, and little things like that? They don't want to be associated with that, especially when they call this amateur athletics, which we all know that it really isn't.
Yeah,
but it's what they call it. So maybe it's now time to actually call it and treat it as it is, so that you could regulate it and not have to worry about any of those horrible situations happening. One question after you, Frank, before we get on to some other stuff. So we saw all the stuff with DraftKings, FanDuel, and their whole thing where the government was coming down on them and saying, hey, this is gambling, and their whole argument is that this is not gambling. Now, here's the thing. I always supported what DraftKings and FanDuel was doing, but I damn sure knew it was gambling. Like fantasy sports, you're putting some money down, you're trying to win. It is a form of gambling. Like, I don't think it's the same as maybe going to play some blackjack or poker at the casino, but it is a form of gambling. Now it seems to me like they're like, okay, yeah, now we're gonna embrace this whole gambling thing. You're gonna put us into that, and we're gonna profit off it. And I'm actually happy for those guys. I really am. Actually, I'm happy for DraftKings and FanDuel because they went through a whole bunch of nonsense. How much do you think this opens things up for them in terms of their cash flow and their ability to just make more money and not worry about the government breathing down the neck? Like, this is just, I feel like it's better business for them. Would you say the same?
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna work both ways, right? So the fantasy community that has been so engulfed in DraftKings and FanDuel up until this point, they're going to get involved with gambling now, and vice versa. Anybody who was a gambler before and they want to be able to do it straight from their phone, they could just download one of those apps and do it. And then, while they're on that app, if they dabble a little bit and they find out, hey, I want to start actually playing fantasy too. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Like those communities can kind of play off of each other. And just to touch on what you were talking about before, I think it's semantics when it comes to the whole case with DraftKings and FanDuel, whether it's gambling or not, right? Because there is a level of luck involved in it. Is it gambling? I wouldn't say so though, because when you play blackjack, when you play roulette, you have some control over what happens, but at least when you're playing fantasy, like you're choosing your lineup, like roulette, blackjack, like
you have no control.
It's not there's no control over that.
You have control. You only have control over whether you go in or what you bet or what you stay or what you call.
So there is strategy involved with it, no doubt about it. But at least if you're playing DraftKings, FanDuel, like you are picking your players. Like it's not completely random. Like yes, the results that might happen, there's certainly a luck factor involved. Like you could take Tom Brady. He could get hurt in the first quarter of the game. You're done for the rest of the you're pretty much done for the day. Like if you played him. So there's a luck factor involved with it, but there still is a large factor of skill too. Knowing which defenses to target, knowing which cornerbacks to play your wide receivers against, knowing which defensive lines can't stop running backs. Like there's skill involved in it, but there is definitely a luck factor. That's where I think semantics come involved. It's not gambling, but there's a factor of luck involved, definitely.
Brian, I'm not sure if Brian necessarily agrees with you.
I'm laughing
smiling the whole time.
I'm laughing because
I hear your points.
I looked up a list of fantasy sports, and I did not know that there was fantasy cricket.
Yo,
I didn't know that either. For what it's worth.
Yo, a lot of folks a lot of my peoples back in Grenada would be thrilled about that.
Hold on. So there's more. There's fantasy NASCAR.
Definitely.
I knew that. I knew that, but I wasn't shocked.
Fantasy NASCAR is actually the third most played fantasy outside of baseball and football, believe it or not.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
More so than basketball.
I'm not going to give my reasons why, but that doesn't surprise me. Anyway.
There's a whole segment in the middle of the country that plays that.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. That's yeah.
And watches.
There's fantasy professional wrestling. Now that I need to get in on.
I don't even know what that would be.
Fantasy professional wrestling over golf.
Yo, TNA had their own fantasy league. Apparently at one point.
It's a fantasy within a fantasy.
Yeah. Let's see. Fantasy. There's fantasy Australian rules football.
I actually knew of that too. I knew about
what is fantasy Congress? Hold on.
That could be a couple of ways. I don't know if I want to know.
They're making a lot of fantasy games. That reminds me, there's
this launched this year.
There's Fantasy Bachelorette.
Did 45 orchestrate this?
No, it's actually gaining a lot of popularity there.
What happened?
Fantasy Bachelorette.
It's Fantasy Bachelorette.
Oh,
God. Fantasy points for if people cry.
No,
they make out.
I'll play NASCAR. I'll play NASCAR.
No, legitimately.
There were Jimmy Johnson all day. That's all I know.
I'll play NASCAR.
Does he still race?
No.
Matty P, do you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Wow.
I love doing that.
Some quick stuff.
Fantasy Congress is an online game structured like fantasy sports where data is gathered about congressional elections and converted into points. Players create
No.
teams of individuals running for office in the U.S. House and Senate.
How many Make America Great Again teams do you think are out there?
What's your team name? MAGA.
MAGA. I'm sure there's a whole bunch going around. Or no, I want no parts of that. All right, before we wrap this break up,
and it ends every election season.
NBA, NFL draft, that's something you obviously, any drafts, you're watching heavily with fantasy sports because you got to know the new players that are coming into the league. How big, because you obviously do a lot of content, you're doing NBA, NFL shows, how big was your viewership and engagement during the NFL draft last month? Like, how was that, and what are you expecting for the NBA draft next month?
So the NFL draft was huge for us last month, and it was last year as well. I think, so what we did for the Fantasy Sports Network is that we would live stream throughout the entire draft, and anytime a position player would get drafted, we would give instant fantasy analysis of that, and we're cutting out videos of that and promoting it right away, pushing that on social media. We actually found that people are searching for this right away. They want instant analysis. They want these short form videos. What do I need to know about Baker Mayfield? I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. What is his fantasy impact for this season, especially with the running backs? Rashad Penny being drafted in the first round. Yeah. We clipped out a video after he got drafted. Instant fantasy analysis, over 20,000 views, Dex. Seriously, in one night. 20,000. That's how many people are out there looking for instant fantasy analysis on these guys getting drafted.
Let me hold you right there.
Yep.
How tough is it to give analysis about a guy where in some situations you don't know where this person is going to play? You know, like if you look at Darnold for the Jets, we don't know what's his fantasy impact. Like, how do you say, hey, Dex, Bryan, this is his fantasy impact? I don't know if he's going to start. I don't know if Bridgewater's going to start. So how do
that one's easy, though. Don't take him because he's with the Jets.
He's not wrong.
I mean, honestly, logic to tell you that, but there's some guys who be like, I want to draft him in the 12th round as my sleeper pick. And you know that. So what do you do in a situation like that? How do you handle that?
So obviously, a lot of what we do is it's educated guesses.
Right.
It's
we don't know it.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what actual NBA drafts are.
Yeah. I mean, so the same thing goes for fantasy, right? Like, you take your analysis of a player, he fits into the Seahawks. You try and take what you've seen on tape, what this kid has done, what his stats look like in college. That's all encompassing. You take all of that into consideration, plug him into the Seattle Seahawks. You take their offensive line into consideration, playing with Russell Wilson. Yep. You look at how many carries they've given running backs in years past, and you take that and you kind of make a projection for yourself. It's the same way you figure out who to play each week in fantasy football. Why am I playing Mike Evans over Deshaun Jackson? I think he has a better matchup. I think he has a weaker corner against him. It's taking what you know about a player in a situation and trying to project forward.
All right, that's good.
Last thing in this segment, because we got to go to break. Are there any rookies in particular who have your attention in the NFL draft, like in terms of fantasy implications?
Well, obviously Saquon Barkley is the big one. He's going to be the most sought after running back in fantasy football since Ezekiel Elliott was drafted. And if you remember that, a couple of years ago, he was drafted in the late first round of fantasy football draft. So we're looking at Saquon Barkley this year like a mid-first round pick.
Wow.
He's going to get 300 to 350 touches this season. I think that's fair to say. They've improved the offensive line. Another one I mentioned, Rashad Penny. The Seahawks, you don't draft a running back in the first round if you're not going to play this guy and make him your workhorse. So I think he's a guy you'll see go in earlier rounds as well. Really, that's it. It's the two running backs right there that I'm looking at. We can get into some running backs that went into later on in the draft. But based on what rookies did last year too, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, people have recency bias. So they see 1 year's rookie class of running backs perform huge, and they say, well, I want the next rookie class that's going to perform. This year, it's Saquon Barkley and Rashad Penny.
All right, so there you go. Those could be some good
Mid-first round is what, 6 to 8-ish in like a 12-team league?
Yeah, that's where Barkley's going to go.
That's where he's going to go.
Yeah.
That is very high, but I also think he's a real deal. So and 350 touches, it's going to be pretty damn good.
BX. Yeah.
All right, we come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs, where things are in the conference finals. Things got really interesting in the West. A little baseball talk, Mets and Yankees. And Bryan wants to talk about, because, this is the time of year a lot of people are graduating from college. We're going to go back down memory lane for some college memories. Everybody ready to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I am. All right, but we'll do that when we come back on the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast.
Sports Guru is the place where fans talk about sports via video. All videos are 60 seconds or shorter. Sports Guru makes the video look more professional and fun by adding automated on-screen graphics. You can follow your favorite sports by team, trending, new, or by people you follow, and more. Type in the title of your video and it will automatically, that's right, auto-magically go into your on-screen graphics. It's just that simple. Tag your teams and publish sports. Let's talk sports.
It ain't hard to tell where to get the latest merchandise from Backpack Broadcasting. Gear is now available via TeePublic. Visit the Backpack Broadcasting TeePublic online store to get shirts, hoodies, mugs, and phone cases. Represent your favorite Backpack Broadcasting shows, including the Sports Walk, Sideline Stories, and of course, the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. Check out the special offers for our podcast listeners at http://t.pub/lic/backpack. Get in the game with your official Backpack Broadcasting gear today. All right, we're back. Episode 31, the Mike Piazza episode, as Bryan likes to call it. Bryan Fonseca, Dexter Henry, Frank
The Jason
Stampfl
Terry episode
of the Fantasy
also.
Sports Network. Now, after you got jumped on LeBron, you can't refer
The
to
Antonio Cromartie episode.
Oh, I like that. That means we all got like 17 kids.
That's right. Add them up.
Damn, I was going to try to beat you to the joke.
Nah, I mean, you think Antonio Cromartie, that's sad. I think about Antonio Cromartie. That's the first thing that pops in my mind.
He's one
He's got
of
his
the
own reality show now, man.
What's it called?
It's like
Antonio and the Kids?
keeping up
something
with-
like that, I think.
keeping up with the Cromarties or something.
Oh, yeah.
No,
I think
should
that
be keeping
actually-
up with child support. That's what it should be. It should be keeping up with child
Trojans
support.
all day.
I mean, whatever. If he's happy with all those kids, bless him. If one, it's a handful. I couldn't do.
You don't have 8, 9 more coming?
No.
No.
No. I can definitively say that. No.
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 Strap up.
No. Yeah. Thank you for the PSA and the good message out there.
That's right.
All
I want a Trojan sponsorship for this podcast.
I'm all for that. Let's get that done.
We're gonna try to make that happen.
I'm fine with it. Ain't hard to tell. Wrap it up.
I'm dead serious. I want a Yo,
Final
Matt,
segment,
make that
wrap
happen.
it up.
Final segment. Wrap it up. You have a wrap it up segment?
Sure.
There you
We
go.
should have that segment every time you talk about Freddie Gibbs. Let's be like, yo, wrap it up.
Man.
Yeah. Get like he wrapped that up real quick, guys. He didn't hear anything from Bryan. All right. On to the NBA.
Just wait till he's on high noon with Bomani and Pablo.
Whatever. Nah.
I'm gonna be so annoying that morning. Before
as
he gets
opposed
on.
to other mornings that you are not.
Damn. All right.
Frank's like, what is this? Frank, NBA playoffs rolling along. We are now in the conference finals. At the time we're recording this podcast, Warriors and Rockets are tied at 1. Boston is up 2-0 on Cleveland. Both series. And Bryan, you could hop in on this too, because I haven't really I haven't spoken to you about this. I didn't text you about this or ask you anything about this.
Thanks.
Are you guys shocked? Yeah, I didn't care to text you. Are you guys shocked with where these series are at?
Yes.
And if so, which one is more surprising?
Oh, Cleveland, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought, because you know what it is, and we were actually talking about this earlier, was in game 2, going in after their loss, you figure LeBron's going to have one of those games. One of those games where I joked, I tweeted out something, so LeBron's going to get 41, 16, and 8 today. He was close. He had something like that kind of resembled that, and they still lost. Granted, they're in Boston, but they're losing to a team that doesn't have Kyrie Irving, doesn't have Gordon Hayward, and still has a lot more depth than they do, still plays a lot more as a team than they do, still is way better defensively. So now it's kind of looking like LeBron's going to have, this reminds me of that last series LeBron had before he left Cleveland the first time. And they got bumped out in the Eastern Conference Finals.
By Orlando.
Rude. And then, was it Orlando?
It was.
Oh, it was Boston. When he took off the jersey and then wasn't that in Orlando? In Boston? I think that was in Boston.
I know they lost to Orlando because
They did lose to
lost
Orlando
Orlando
one year, but I think that was the year Orlando made it to the championship, and then the year after Boston went back and they lost to Boston. I think I'm right. But
No,
regardless,
you're right, because the Lakers beat Orlando in 2009, and then they beat the Celtics.
right, and I thought he was
You're
going to do 2012 Game 6 again which he started, 21 points in the first quarter. Then he got rocked, and I don't know what happened after that. So now it's like I think they'll win the next 2 games, but I'm kind of just hoping that at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to see Boston in the finals.
Yeah, me neither.
Sorry, Boston people. Like, I don't want to see your team in the
A whole lot of
finals.
people mad at you.
Yeah.
So are you?
As long as they listen to the podcast, I don't give a shit.
Are you also shocked?
I censored myself.
I mean, I feel you on that. Are you seem to be shocked as much
Yeah.
about the result of where Boston is in their series as opposed to the Rockets rebounding from their game 1 blowout and blowing out the Warriors in game 2. So you're more shocked at where Boston is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that surprised that the Rockets won. I'm surprised that they blew them out. I thought the Rockets and Warriors would be a very close series. I thought it would go 7 games. I still think it's going to go 7 games.
I hope so.
Steph Curry doesn't look right, though.
No, he doesn't.
And they're attacking
He
him.
hasn't had the lift. He's been dropped a few times by Chris Paul. That's not helping the ankles, by the way.
No.
I'll
He
throw that
doesn't-
out there.
He doesn't look. I don't want to say bouncy. There's just
I think that's the good word.
there's-
Spry.
yeah.
Spry.
There's a bit of a jerkiness to Curry's game too
Stiff.
when he's moving and the way he is off the ball and the way he'll rise and fire, and you're not seeing that. And the 3-point shooting, obviously, he's shot he's hit 3-3-pointers in the 2 games, 3 of 16 or something like that.
It doesn't seem like he's ball handling all that much either.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like the
a lot of
offense is
Kevin Durant.
running through him. It's been a lot of Durant.
yeah.
Rightfully so. I mean, Durant's been nearly unstoppable in the series, so I guess you want to go with the hot hand, but it seems like really the offense has run a lot through him, a lot through Draymond Green. I mean, that's always going to happen, obviously. But I am more surprised by the Boston-Cleveland series. I think we forgot because Cleveland dominated the Raptors
there you go.
so
There you
easily in the second round. I think they just have the Raptors' number.
Yep,
LeBron
they do.
has DeRozan's number, and
Kyle
we
Lowry.
forgot
He's
in the
got that
first
heart.
round, the Cleveland faced a good team in the Indiana Pacers that played together as a team and had a star in the making in Victor Oladipo.
Yeah.
The Boston Celtics also play as a team. They have a lot of stars in the making. They don't just have one star in the making.
Yeah.
It's the sum of their parts. LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world right now. He is better than anybody on the court when they play Boston, but it's the sum of the Boston Celtics parts. It's when you put Jason Tatum together, you put Jaylen Brown, you put the leadership of Al Horford. I mean, who saw Al Horford having this type of playoffs?
He
The
looks
way that
good.
he's played. I mean,
He's a top 5 player in the playoffs.
the leadership
Yeah.
that he's had, the defense that he's playing. Brad Stevens, outside of Popovich, second best coach in the NBA. He's pushing Pop to be the best coach in the NBA right now. I honestly do believe that.
He's done a
Terry
fantastic
Rozier,
job.
everything that they've done, it's just they play team basketball, and the way that they are playing right now is able to overcome LeBron having a 40-point triple-double.
They're a better version than they're
I
a better
agree.
version of the Pacers.
I
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah,
all.
they are.
I agree with all that. And you know what? The Celtics winning the first 2 games. They really make Toronto look even worse. To me, that's the way I look at it. It makes Toronto look worse because
Does it make Brad Stevens look even better?
It can be both.
Yeah.
It can be both. I think it definitely can be both.
I think Toronto being worse is funnier.
But I think that's why. It makes Brad Stevens look better, and you're 100% spot on with everything that he's been doing. And I don't think any accolades that he's gotten should be undercut at all. I think he's well deserving of all that. I think he's a fantastic coach.
How do you feel about Dwayne Casey being a Coach of the Year nominee and then Toronto congratulating him?
Yeah, they
saying,
tweeted it
"Congrats,
out."
Coach.
That really happened.
Did you see that?
Nah, I
You
missed
just-
that. That sounds shocking to me.
Yeah.
I completely missed that.
You reminded me of that now when we were talking about
that's
that.
he didn't.
They
Deserve
said
that.
congrats,
He didn't
Coach.
deserve that.
Actually
deserve that.
reminded me a lot of Joe Girardi last year.
Oh,
Joe-
Making it far in the
that's a good
playoffs.
Well,
comparison.
he didn't deserve that.
He
either.
didn't. Neither coach deserved it.
He deserved it. I almost can understand that Casey won a little bit more than that. Anyway, I'm getting off the topic, but what I did want
Getting
to
off topic is what we do.
what I did want to say to you, and I think I now forgotten what exactly it is that I wanted to
We
say.
were talking Brad Stevens, how bad it's made.
but
the
I
Raptors look.
had a question for. Oh yeah, I knew where I was going to go. Sorry, it came back to me. The question for both of you guys, because Bryan brought it up and said, I don't want to see any part of Boston in the finals.
No.
But now I'm starting to think, well, we look at the way Brad Stevens coached, the way he's had this team, maybe they are a good matchup for one of the Western Conference teams.
I'm good on that.
What say you?
In terms of, I think everybody wants to see LeBron in the finals, right? Again,
Yes.
what is it, this is going to be the 8th, 9th year in a row. Everyone
Yes.
the money is in LeBron going up against either one of the powerhouse Western Conference teams. But if you are just a basketball purist and you want to see a good basketball game, that would be the Boston Celtics against either team in the Western Conference. Like, I've been doubting the Boston Celtics the entire playoffs, and I think regardless of either team they would play in the West, they'd probably lose in 6 games. But I think all those games would be competitive.
I agree.
I think they would be close games.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think they would. Brian's just not here for that.
Frank just said it. I legitimately want to see LeBron against the best team in the West.
I think
I understand that desire to see that. I understand.
Like if Boston had, never mind Gordon Hayward because he's probably their best trade asset right now. But if they had Kyrie Irving, then maybe I'll be like, all right, because Kyrie Irving is kind of somebody who you see on that next tier of superstar.
Right. They don't have a superstar yet that you can put.
Well, Jason Tatum's gonna be, but I don't want to see Jason Tatum against Kevin Durant in the finals. I mean, it sounds great, but I want to see LeBron try to, you know what I mean? I want to see as long as we have him, I want to see just how close he's going to actually challenge Michael Jordan year in and year out. Even being that, you know,
I understand. I understand that. Who did you have in each of your series? We had made our picks. Who'd you have?
So I had the Cavs in 6, and I had the Rockets in 7. And
same thing.
I've had the Rockets and Cavs since before the playoffs started. So I was just sticking to that pick.
I had Cavs 6 and Warriors 7. I'm still sticking with it. So we'll see. I hope that the Warriors and Rockets go 7. I don't really have strong rooting interest either way there. I hope it goes 7, and we'll see. Frank,
what do you think about real quick, Jordan's conveniently announced documentary that's coming out as LeBron is going on this tear, and he's here to drop this because he's trying to remind y'all who he is.
No, he's not, man.
That's my theory.
I wouldn't put it past MJ, man. I wouldn't put it past.
You know how competitive
why? Because MJ's so competitive.
Speaking of gambling, by the way.
Yeah.
This is a good episode to bring that up.
You think Jordan was really happy after that Supreme Court decision?
It's going to be longer than OJ made in America by like 2 times.
But like, he is Michael Jordan. He is a global phenomenon. That's what I'm saying.
You think Michael Jordan reads Twitter? Because I think he reads Twitter. Or if not, he has people that reads Twitter. This is my theory, right? I'm dead serious.
This is going to be
I'm partially serious, but I'm dead serious. I think what he's doing is he's had people look at his Twitter, and a lot of people are just trying to crown LeBron as the best ever. Hear me out. Trying to crown LeBron as the best ever, whatever. He sees this, and he's like, all right, we're going to drop this documentary on him. He's been planning this for a long time. I bet you he's been planning this. Because documentaries just don't come out, hey, we're going to make a documentary. There's a process.
I'm sure people have reached out to him about a documentary for quite some time.
Because LeBron was gaining traction. You know what? This might have started right after LeBron won the Cleveland This Is For You championship. And then they got together and was like, you know what? We got to remind people who I am.
You're making it sound like
all these kids that were born in 2001 don't know who I am, didn't even see me when I was with the Wizards. I got to remind them I'm the best ever.
You sound really hurt about that.
No, I hope I'm right because that would be great. Otherwise, what? You know?
I mean, I don't think I don't think Jordan has any ill intent to take LeBron's shine away or hates that people are talking about.
I don't know if he wants to take it away, but he just wants to.
Quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of the LeBron Jordan debate. I'm over it. I'm over it. Like, I get it. You're gonna rock with who you've seen in your generation that you think is the best, and some other people aren't. And people who are older than me are gonna be like, "Yo, what about Magic?" And somebody's gonna be, "What about Russell?" Man, I'm tired. I don't have time for
Speaking of Bill Simmons, actually, because I was listening to the Zach Lowe's podcast, Bill Simmons finally admitted that LeBron was second best all time, and who was his second of all time before that was Bill Russell.
Yeah, that was his.
And I'm just in the background like, what about Kobe Bryant?
I'm a Bill Simmons.
I'm a Kobe guy.
I love Kobe.
I love Kobe, but we had Robin Lundberg up here who tried to destroy Kobe's legacy.
Kobe wasn't in the top 10.
Yeah, he said Kobe's not in the top 10. Yeah. Robin, no, I love you, man, but
we're gonna have him back.
Yeah, of course. We're gonna come back. We're gonna revisit it, but he does. Yeah,
because he said Steph Curry is the greatest point guard of all time recently. So I want to.
He did not say that.
Yeah, he did. You didn't see that?
Yeah. We're not even gonna go there. Couple of things for you, Frank. You are unfortunately like most people in this room, because you remember how you did the whole thing in the beginning, where most people, we still have this going out behind us. Most people in this room have a beard and a full beard, and I don't. Maddie P doesn't, who's sitting over there. So we're the outcasts.
But he can grow one. I can tell.
Okay, you can tell somebody can grow a beard.
What? Yeah.
Oh, I look at you. You look like you can grow a beard.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. You are not a Mets fan. You are a Yankees fan.
That is correct.
I can't even say like sorry to hear that. There's nothing smart.
It's like, oh, nice winning all those championships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that must suck.
Bryan said he recently had some conversation with his brother where he thinks that New York's a baseball town, but his brother thinks that could change if the Knicks ever got good. I know you're a Knicks fan.
No. So basically, I was playing the show, right? And
of course you were making trades, being the best GM of all time.
No, we are in a winning streak right now, though.
God.
But when you got time, when you got an hour to wind down or so, you play the show.
You went too deep.
So basically, me and my brother were talking, and I don't know how we got into this conversation, but he was basically saying that he thinks New York is going to always be a baseball town. Not Mets. Yankees, when they're good, it's always going to be not a baseball town, a Yankee town. But then I said, don't you think like if one of these days, and this isn't going to happen in the foreseeable future maybe, but it might, if the Knicks get really good, like really like picture their 54-win team, but like constantly like a 3 to 5 year period of that. Don't you think they will supersede maybe the Yankees at some point as like being the talk of the town for even that brief period? I said that that's possible just because New York is also a basketball city. You know what I mean?
The Mecca.
Yeah, so that's why I take that into account too.
I should say no because I've seen it. I've seen the Knicks be that good
in the
that
90s
period of time. Yeah, and
see, I was
at a time where also the Yankees were coming out of a dark time and turning into a great time, and it still was heavy baseball town. It still would dominate.
But baseball's not as big now as it was back then.
That's
though.
true.
Granted. I mean, you're the one who's going to remember this time period the most out of everybody in the room.
Yeah, thank you.
But
Friendly reminder.
But
yo, I'm coming for you, man. I got some stuff for you.
You already do.
I got stuff for you.
You already do. Wait till bandana drops. Anyway, so what's it called? 20-ish years ago, when the Yankees were on their run and the Knicks were on their run, not as good of a run, but still a good run. Yeah, it was definitely going to be a baseball town. But now that baseball is more regional, still big in New York City, but not as much. And basketball is a bigger sport now than it used to be. You don't think so?
I still think baseball's still too much bigger here. It still dominates the topic conversations. It'll still dominate the back pages. I mean, when the Knicks are good, they're right up there. Trust me, it's right there. The city's rocking. It's right there with them, as we saw from that fake 54-win season a couple years ago.
What do you think? To your point, though, real quick, even when the Mets get really good,
oh yeah, it'll be behind them. You'll see Mets fans come out of the closets and all this stuff. What do you think? You think the Yankees are always the premier team? They're your team. You think they're the premier team?
I think if the Knicks were to if they were to build a dynasty, we're talking about maybe like what the Celtics are doing now. If the Knicks were able to do that, I mean, you can try prayer, Dex. I've tried. It doesn't work with the New York Knicks. We're way past prayer, aren't we? I think.
Are you kidding me?
I want Doncic. What are you talking about?
It's like playoffs. I tried that already, Frank.
Oh man!
Sorry,
you need like a genie lamp or something.
Yeah, I need more than prayer. I tried that.
I think if the Knicks were able to build a dynasty, I think that would take the city over. I think that would overpower the Yankees. And if you look at what the Yankees are doing right now, they're on the verge of building a dynasty themselves.
I think they are.
They have Stanton under contract for the next 10 years now. They have Aaron Judge still playing. He's arbitration eligible for the next who knows how long. They have Gary Sanchez. The core four, like trying to find a new core four, I think that's a little cliche with the Yankees, but they have a lot of young talent. So they're on the verge of being a dynasty too. But New York, in my opinion, is so deprived. They're so hungry for this to be a basketball city again. I really do believe that. I mean, just based on how I felt. I'm a diehard Yankee fan. What it would mean for me to see a Knicks championship in my life, and look, we can all say it. I don't know. You're a Knicks fan? Are you a Knicks fan or not really?
No.
All right, well, me and Dex...
say it like that.
Me and Dex can say it. Like, if I were to see a Knicks championship, like, that would move me. It's crazy to say, but it would.
I'm not even a Knicks fan. It would move me too as a New Yorker, though.
Would it?
Like that would transcend me. It would like.
Yeah, you feel like you'd be outside of your body.
Yeah.
I get it.
I would take weeks off of work if the Knicks won a championship.
I
don't even know what I would.
Have you allowed your mind to ever go to that place?
I don't think it's possible.
Did you?
I don't even think it's possible to imagine like someone hoisting up the trophy in the Garden. I don't even think that's possible.
Have you done it in 2K?
I have.
Yeah, I have to.
Except it makes you feel a kind of way.
Because I got drafted by the Knicks and we won a championship before in 2K. That's happening.
I got drafted. My team.
My player, yeah.
Okay.
Career mode.
Whatever.
If that were to happen, I think the Knicks would dominate. I think the Knicks.
You know
would
what?
You
dominate.
have to. This is the first time in a long. But wait, you said it would take a dynasty though? Like in dynasty, do you mean literally?
No, I mean if they even won a championship,
constantly competitive or one
I
championship.
think it means like on a young core on the verge of what the Celtics are doing, where you can see them being good for the next 6 years, barring major injuries.
So if you have like 3 Porzingises.
That's crazy. You'd win a championship. You'd be the Warriors. I mean, that's what.
Well, like a guard version, the current version, and a 6'8" version.
Yeah, you know this. You know what I'm going to say about this? All this talk is way too much excitement. It's way too much. Like I don't even know if my body can take it. One more thing before we go that we promised that we would talk about. So one last thing to talk about. Bryan brought up this college week. It's the time where everybody is graduating.
It is.
People seeing friends graduate. What do you remember from it? We'll keep it to college graduation. All right, so we don't have to go too far back for some people. All right.
But this is most of your.
Yeah, but you don't want to take shots at that.
I don't got much to offer
So,
here. I want to hear what you got to say.
What I have to say about college and graduation?
Yeah.
I told Matt a little bit of this earlier
We've seen
today.
the picture.
You've seen the picture of me?
You showed us where you have like the same exact head, but like a smaller.
Yeah, I hope
body.
my head didn't change. Yeah, I hope so. College graduation memory. Oh, it was a good day. It was a long day. That's one thing I remember about college graduation. It was so long. 3 hours, my ceremony, which was more than that for me because at University of Pittsburgh, we had you went to graduation in the morning, at least if you're free, depending on your school. So by your college, because we didn't get to walk the stage. Everybody didn't get to walk the stage in the Peterson Event Center because there was just way too many students. So you had your smaller graduation with your major, and then you went to the big graduation. So I did that 8 o'clock in the morning. Then I think the major graduation was at noon. So all in total, I was in like graduation stuff for like 5 hours. Now what was bad was the night before, I went and had a little fun with some friends and stuff and hung out till like 4 in the morning. I had to be up at like 7. So that was a bad idea. So yeah, rough. Like I was kind of falling asleep in the graduation. Shout out to former Pitt basketball player Carl Krauser, who sat next to me at my graduation, and we were trying to keep each other from not falling asleep. But it was good. That was my experience of graduation. That was, yeah, since Bryan wants to date things, that was 13 years ago.
He was waiting for it.
Yeah. So why not just say it if he was waiting for it again? We knew what he was doing. Yeah. It was 13 years ago this month.
I don't even.
Why? Did you guys enjoy your college graduation experience?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
I'm somewhere in between. It's still a little bit closer to Bryan. Sorry.
Yeah, I like how you just like not gonna give up that number.
Yeah, look, 2013, 5 years ago, St. Francis College. We had it at the BAM Theater.
Yeah.
Justin Tuck spoke at graduation.
I remember that. I was there.
Still wish it was a New York Jet, but I understand why they didn't take a jet. They wanted people to be successful in the future, so that's why they didn't take a New York Jet.
In 2013, what jet are you taking?
I don't know.
Mark, you bring it back, Chad Pennington.
David Harris.
David Harris. That's a solid choice for that team. That's
David
a solid
Harris,
choice.
Yeah,
that's
the leadership right there. I think more than the graduation itself, walking across the stage, it's fun. Pose for the camera. I think just like the celebration afterwards, like hanging out with family. I had like a house party. Yeah. Went out to Long Island, my aunt's house. We had like this big thing. Like it was a good time. So overall, I mean,
I don't remember. Fun. I can't remember my guest speaker. It was somebody local from Pittsburgh. I cannot remember.
It was like Peter King or something like that. Whoever the author is that went to St. Francis.
I remember my cousin. I went out to Stanford like later that month. My cousin went to Stanford. She's crazy smart. She's got a PhD. Went out there. Steve Jobs was her guest speaker. I never forget. Yes. No, at Stanford. Steve Jobs was coming to Pitt. It's like, no.
I saw that one in one of my classes. In mass communications class. That same Steve Jobs speech at Stanford.
Yeah. I was there. I was in the stadium for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For that.
Wait, what year was that?
2005.
The Steve Jobs
just wanted
speech?
to hear that again. No. You're a jerk. we can officially say that Brian Fonseca is a jerk. What do you think, Frank? You can say it. You can say he's a jerk.
You're a jerk.
There we go.
I'll always be a little partial to Dex.
I'm trying. I am too.
Well, he called somebody that last week on the podcast.
I am too, except when I'm with them. Then I gotta,
Makes sense.
All understood. All right.
I'm trying to think. Wait, do I have something real quick? I do know
yes,
that.
you didn't give a graduation memory. Sorry.
I do know that I don't really have a sensational story from graduation itself, but I do remember in college, being in the student newspaper when I was SCU Today, and I was in the office, and I used to blast music in there. So I remember I had one.
What a shock.
I had one specific what. Because you work with me and you know how I like my music. So basically,
straight Freddie Gibbs.
so basically, I remember having a quote unquote soundtrack. This was like my junior year or whatever, and it was always saved as a tab, right? And a lot of times I would just listen to it so then I could do work to it. And yeah, it was a Freddie Gibbs mixtape. I just wanted to say that. Babyface Killer. That's what Monty Jones listened to that made him a Freddie Gibbs fan. And he's gonna be on High Noon. But Monty Jones brought Freddie Gibbs to ESPN Radio. And we're going to bring him on this podcast one day. Both of them.
I don't know what to say.
At different times.
I don't know what to say.
I really don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say. Like, I should have known that's how the story was going to end. I should have known that it wasn't going to matter. Frank, we're going to get going. We want to thank you for coming on. We're out of time. Thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing your knowledge of fantasy sports. One last quick thing. How much bigger fantasy sports has grown so much in the last 6 years since, as long as I've known you. How much more do you think it's going to grow?
Well, we touched on it a little bit with the gambling. I think those two things can go hand in hand. The more people that gamble, maybe they'll want to get involved with fantasy. I mean, this is an industry in North America. 59 million people are playing fantasy sports. So I think, the digital age that we're in, as competitive that people are, I think it's going to continue to grow, man. And that number, since we've known each other, that number has grown. Since you've started playing fantasy, since I've started playing fantasy, that number has grown. And I don't see any reason why it's going to stop. I think it's only going to keep getting bigger and bigger, especially the more innovations that people make to the games.
I think the bigger question actually is what grows faster, fantasy sports or me growing a beard? That's the real question.
My money's on fantasy sports.
Damn.
You know what I remember? When we had Nick Medalinos here, he was talking about journalism, Vorp. I want there to be a fantasy league for journalists. Like, we can draft each other and things like that.
I'm not drafting you.
I would love to know who will go first.
Right. I'm not drafting Bryan. Can't do it.
You're gonna miss. You're gonna miss out. You're gonna miss out on a lot of points.
Well, fantasy sports is growing.
I'm a sleeper.
My beard is not growing. That's a wrap for episode 31 of the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. We'll be back with more coming soon. Thanks to our guest, Frank Stampfl. You can check him out on FNTSY Sports Network. Great segments he does there. Please check him out. One of the best, most knowledgeable people with fantasy sports. Thanks for coming on again, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks,
anytime.
Man.
All right. So for Bryan Fonseca, Frank Stampfl, I'm Dexter Henry. Until next time on the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast.
Take note.
If you don't stop at this damn take.
Yo, where the season's over.
Take note.
Yo, are you even gonna?